there's about 18 different species of Elkhorn fern. They come in amazing variety of shapes and sizes, but this is probably the most commonly grown in nurseries and in people's homes. You can see it has these long fertile fronds and then these non-fertile shield fronds and these leaves, and these are what we're going to attach the fern to the board with. First things you need to think about when mounting an Elkhorn fern is what you're going to mount it onto. I've chosen to mount onto marine ply. This is 9mm marine ply. I've just marked a circle and then cut it using a jigsaw, and then on the back I've marked out a couple of points, put a couple of little screws in, and then you can see a bit of copper wire so it can be hung from a wall. And then down here I've got a couple of little stoppers that I've just picked up from a hardware shop, and that's going to stop the board resting against the wall because the board will be damp a lot of the time and it will stop your wall getting damaged. The next thing is choosing your plant. I've selected this one because, as you can see, it's got some really nice big shields, and this means it's going to be quite easy to mount onto my board. If you select a fern that's only got the fertile fronds, you're going to have a big blob of moss at the base, so I think it's great to choose a fern to mount that has a really good sized shield front. What to do is to pull the plant out of the pot. You are probably going to stress and damage your plant a little bit. It's unavoidable. It's been happily growing away in this pot, so pulling it out is going to be a bit of a shock to the plant. The main thing you want to be careful is not to damage the new fronds or the little node where the fronds are coming out of on the shield. In time, you're not going to see any broken or damaged shields, and you may have to remove a couple of the fertile fronds if they get badly damaged. You also want to be careful. You can see there's like a downy sort of fluffy stuff on the surface of the leaves. You don't want to be wiping too much of that off. That's actually like a natural sunscreen for the fern. So just try and handle it as carefully as you can. There's going to be a bit of damage, but you just do your best. Here we go. So she's out, and as you can see, there is a lot of soil along the base of the plant here. They have quite sort of fine matted root systems. We are going to remove quite a lot of this. I'll break some off with my hands, but then we'll make a nice clean cut as we get further into the root system. Great, so it's held up pretty nicely. We haven't had to damage it too much to get out of the pot, wasn't too stubborn. You can see on the back of the fern it's really lumpy, so we want to make a nice flat cut so that this will sit really nicely up against the board. If there's any air pockets, it's more likely that the root system's going to dry out and it's not going to be a happy plant. Blade here. Some people will use an old bread knife. Basically you want a serrated blade that's going to be strong enough to cut through. Sometimes you'll have a couple of big roots that you'll have to try and cut through, but yeah, this was fairly easy. It has been a painless job so far. So, ready to mount. You can see that the back of the fern is nice and flat, so it's going to sit nicely against the board. And there's not too much soil there. I might remove a little bit more before it goes up against the board. That should be good. So the next step is we want to see roughly how big the fern is against the board. I'm going to place it this way up. You can see there's a little bit of a pocket in the top, and I feel like the plant will grow nicely up in this direction. Look at the way your plant's growing. You can see the shield fronds are growing up this way. Elkhorns are actually epiphytes, which means that they grow in the trees, and usually sideways like this. Their sterile fronds form a bucket. So their job is to catch water and nutrients falling from trees. So when you place your Elkhorn on the board, you want the buckets to be sitting up and out so that when you water it, you can really get the water in the back behind the fern. I'm just going to measure roughly on the board where I need to make a few holes. Now, I'm just going to drill into the board and make some holes so we can use wire to secure the Elkhorn to the board. When you place your Elkhorn, make sure you remember which is up. You don't want to attach your Elkhorn upside down to your board. Now I'm going to attach my Elkhorn with some green Floristry wire. It's cotton wrapped and the green will kind of disguise itself, so it's going to be camouflaged into the fern. I've seen lots of different ways of doing it. Some people use chicken mesh to attach their fern. Some people wrap the base of their fern in a stocking. There's lots of different ways of doing it. Some people will drill directly into their fern and through the sterile fronds, but for today I'm going to attach my fern with this stone. You can see I've placed the fern in the middle of all of the little holes I've drilled, and then we're going to use the wire to wrap around the fern through the holes to secure it to the board. You want to be really careful, just kind of lift the fertile fronds up and place the wire around the base of the fern. Some of them will lift up and you can kind of hide the wire underneath some of the fronds. But as the fern grows, the non-fertile fronds will cover the wire, and so you're not going to see it forever. You may damage some of the non-fertile fronds because you have to pull this wire quite firmly tight, and it might cut into them a little bit. It's going to stress the plant a bit, but just as long as you're careful of the growing nodes, you're going to be fine. Run a couple of wires around so it's held on side to side and top to bottom. Wrapped onto the board and not cutting into the fronds into the non-fertile fronds too much. You can see on the back that I've just twisted the wires around each other to secure, and I'll do a few more twists to make sure that they're really not coming apart. The next step now is to wrap the exposed root ball with moist sphagnum moss. So this is going to help your ferns stay watered and happy until the non-fertile fronds start to grow and cover the board a little bit more. So this is sphagnum moss. You can see that I've had it soaking in water. It does take a little while to moisten, so you want to give it a little while in a little tub like this with some water to moisten it up. Just squeeze out the excess moisture and then just start packing it around the base of your fern. So as you can see, I've been packing moss in and around the base of the fern. There was a few little gaps where the root ball wasn't sitting flat against the back of the board, so I've just tucked moss in there to make sure that there's no air pockets. We really want that to be all tightly packed in there. Sphagnum moss in and around the base of the Elkhorn fern, making sure that there's no air pockets, The next step is to secure the moss. If you just leave it like that, it's going to fall off. So I'm going to use some fishing line to attach the moss. This is 0.4 mil. You don't want it to be too thin or it's going to snap or break under tension. Yeah, so here we go. Let's see if it sticks. Perfect. So here's the finished product. The process has been a bit stressful for the plant. The wires are cut into the shield fronds and we've removed a little bit of the root system. So to counteract the stress, we want to give the plant a soak with some seaweed solution. I use about 10 ml of solution to about 9 litres of water. You can soak your plant in a bucket or a big tub. Leave it in there until the board's well and truly damp and the moss and the plant are really wet. You can get a little bit all over the fertile fronds as well. Pull it out of the tub, let it dry off, and then you can hang it. I like to see solar plants in my home about once a month, and Elkhorns are no exception. You use the same dilution rate, 10 mils to 9 litres of water, and make sure that you really soak into the plant, spray it onto the fronds, and that way the whole plant gets a great treatment. It'll absorb the solution through the leaves and through the root system. In the summer or when you notice your plant actively growing, that's when you want to feed it. Once it goes into dormancy and it has a little rest, hold off on the food because it can be stressful for a plant to be fed when it's not actively growing. Just want to be feeding it when you see lots of these lovely new fertile fronds, and you might see some new shields growing as well. You can use a liquid fertiliser at about 20 mils per 9 litres, but look at the dilution rate on the pack. Or you can put some slow release fertiliser in behind some of the shield fronds. My granddad used to always put banana peels and tea bags in behind his Elkhorn, but if it's in your home, that's probably not going to be practical, and I would stick to the slow release fertiliser or a nice liquid solution. For long-term care, I like to mist my Elkhorns every day, especially in the warmer weather. They do grow naturally in a humid environment, so you don't want them drying out. If they're starting to get too dry, you will see leaf browning along the margins of the leaves and on the tips. You should also soak your board once a week or every 10 days. It really depends on the conditions of your home. So for some people who have their heating running over winter, perhaps you water it more regularly. For others, when your home is cooler and darker, you're going to be watering less. These plants are epiphytes, meaning that they grow up in the branches of trees, and so they tend to have a wet-dry cycle for watering. They'll get really wet with a big downpour and then dry out when the rain stops, and then again, next downpour, they're going to be soaked through. So you want to try and mimic that cycle in your home. Give it a really good soak, let it dry out, and then water it again. The big Elkhorns like this not only look beautiful on a board, but they're going to be really happy growing on a board as it mimics their natural growing environment. If you have any questions about the process or how to care for your Elkhorn, you can DM me and follow me for more tips and tricks on my page.